warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18's Global. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. As the raging war between Israel and Hamas now enters day 13, U.S. President Joe Biden has concluded his Israel trip with a pledge to deliver humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. Israel's retaliatory bombardment for almost 2 weeks has left horrific destruction in Gaza. It's catastrophic. Now, after days of mounting pressure over humanitarian aid and the need for a ceasefire, Israel has finally announced that it won't block aid entering Gaza from Egypt. The move comes after Biden's Middle East trip that was focused on humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where millions of residents have been displaced. The U.S. has announced about 28 trucks that will be allowed to enter Gaza via Egypt's Rafah crossing. In the middle of attempts to de-escalate the Israel-Hamas war, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has also landed in Jerusalem, and during his meeting with Netanyahu, Sunak again extended his support to Israelis. Sunak also tried to maintain a balancing act by mentioning that Palestinians are victims of Hamas and those suffering should receive aid. On that note, let me bring you a very important voice over here. This is a CNN News 18 exclusive. Juliette Touma is the spokesperson for UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. I spoke with her. She joined me live from Amman. Let's listen into what she has to say. Remember, she's calling for a humanitarian ceasefire. She says that Gaza is under siege and several fathers, mothers, sisters, daughters, they are grieving because too many lives have been lost, and this war needs to end. Juliette Touma, thank you so much for joining us here at CNN News 18. As someone who is the Director of Communications for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, talk to us about the situation in Gaza. As you know, especially after the deadly blast on Al Ahli Hospital, and now there's been another airstrike on Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, despite large number of Palestinians moving there after Israel urged Gazans to evacuate south.
Well, no place is safe in the Gaza Strip. No place is safe. Even schools and hospitals are no longer safe. Even UN facilities are no longer safe. At UNRWA, at least 30 of our facilities and installations have been impacted in one way or another. We had one school, an UNRWA school, that was sheltering the displaced. It also got hit. And so no place is safe, and it is about time that there is a ceasefire that puts an end to all of this for the sake of civilians wherever they are.
The United Nations Relief and Works Agency has already made it amply clear that Gaza is on the brink of a major health and sanitation crisis. Juliette, 65% of the population has already been living there below poverty line even before the outbreak of the war. Yes, Israel has agreed to permit water, food, and other supplies to Gaza via Egypt. But as we all know, it's going to be a long war, as has already been declared by Israel's Prime Minister. How can Arab nations and the global community help in averting this humanitarian crisis any further?
Let me just emphasize one thing. UNRWA and the rest of the humanitarian family in the Gaza Strip, all of us, we have not been able to deliver any supplies into the Gaza Strip since the 7th of October. Nothing. We have sent no supplies. No supplies.
Juliette, on Wednesday...
Gaza is under siege. Gaza is under siege. And the siege needs to be lifted. What we're calling for at UNRWA is for sustained and regular humanitarian access, so that we are able to send in humanitarian supplies that people like you and I need desperately.
Juliette, on Wednesday, the United States vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that would have called for a humanitarian ceasefire, something you just mentioned. How do you assess...
I can't go into this. I'm sorry. This is very political. I'm a humanitarian aid worker.
All right, but let's talk about the need for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, something you just spoke about, and that is also what was talked about in that UN Security Council resolution.
What we need right now for civilians, wherever they are, is a ceasefire. Too many people have lost their lives. Too many people are grieving. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brother. There has been tremendous loss, and it's time for a ceasefire, for the fighting to come to an end, to spare more civilians from suffering further, wherever they are. It's time for a ceasefire right away.
Hamas has been telling Gaza residents to stay put and is using them as human shields, also holding Israeli hostages. Even if Gazans want to flee the enclave altogether, what are the challenges ahead?
Gaza has been under a blockade even before this war began. And so movement and access restrictions have been very heavy and have been in place for quite a while now, more than 16 years, right? So the siege that came just recently came to tighten further the blockade. People cannot easily leave the Gaza Strip or come back to the Gaza Strip. So what needs to happen is for the siege to be lifted, and to be lifted right away, and for a ceasefire to take place as soon as possible.
Juliette, on Monday, the UNRWA shared a post on Twitter, now X, accusing Hamas terrorists of stealing food and medical equipment from its premises in Gaza City. However, the UNRWA later deleted that post. What happened?
We made a mistake. That initial Twitter, the original tweet, had inaccurate information in it. So we deleted the tweet, and we have since issued a statement where UNRWA has confirmed that none of the warehouses that we run and we own on the ground in the Gaza Strip have been looted, and that these photos that were circulating on social media, they were in fact of workers who came in coordination with the United Nations to pick up some supplies and send it to health providers across the Gaza Strip.
Juliette, my last question. The US President, Mr. Biden, has announced $100 million aid for Gaza and the West Bank. He also says he'll make sure it reaches at a time there's already a war in Ukraine. How does UNRWA assess the scope of US aid to Gaza?
Well, we do hope that some of the assistance that President Biden has announced also comes to UNRWA. We are the largest UN agency operating in Gaza and one of the oldest. We have 13,000 people working with us on the ground in Gaza. We are ready to provide assistance as soon as it is allowed to come in.
All right, Juliette Touma, it was a pleasure to have you here on CNN
Thank you so much.
News 18. Thank you so
Thanks
much. Stay safe.
Thanks. Bye-bye.